This episode, winterization tips for your home. Well, folks, it's that time of year again. It's starting. The leaves are falling. All the nonsense is happening. I don't like winter. Days are getting shorter. Phooey. But anyway, with that, it is time. It's time to get your home ready for winter. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation in your home maintenance and repair. This edition is entitled Winterization Tips for Your Home. And to help me explain, I have my ever cheerful co-host and old buddy, Johnny. Johnny, how prepared are you for winter this year?
Yes, more prepared than I was 2 years ago.
That's right. By God.
Yeah. 2 years ago was the big freeze, and then pipes were popping everywhere.
That's pipes a popping, baby.
And so this time I am much better prepared for what's to come.
Or what's to come. All right, but before we jump in, we're just going to ask you to like and subscribe our channel on either YouTube, or if you're listening on a podcast alone, please do that. It helps the algorithms. We're trying to get the word out. We're trying to help more people save time, money, and aggravation on their home maintenance and repair. We'd appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, Handyman Pros Radio Show, or questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. Anyway, with that, Johnny, let's go in. Let's talk about it. We got a bunch of things. Number one, Johnny, what's number one? Seal gaps and cracks, right? We've talked about these before. We're going to beat them in your head until you get them done.
Yeah, I mean, like I think some of the shows a while ago that we were talking about this, and I hope everybody, if you haven't heard, those shows, you might want to go back and listen to them. But the one thing that I suggested was it's easy to find all the issues when it's really cold out.
Yep.
And I just took a sticky note and just put it there. So that I would take a picture of it and I could go back and reference it. So I'd have sticky notes all over the place. But during the warmer weather, I can get back at it. I wasn't going to take the door off to put a bottom seal in during the winter, but that kind of thing. So, when you asked me how prepared are you, going through that process, I sealed up a lot of gaps.
Windows, doors, basements, any place where there's a crack. There's plenty of different types of products. We're not going to get into each of the products, but there's a bunch of different ways to seal up the various different cracks that you have. You trust both in heating and cooling, you will save yourself time, money, and or aggravation, as it were. I will say this, if you want to try, if you are so inclined and you know anybody that has a FLIR camera, if you ever get a FLIR picture of your house, you'll see where all the gaps and cracks are. So it's pretty amazing stuff. But
let me just pause you. That's a great point.
Yep.
But besides a FLIR camera, which are really expensive,
right? If
you have just a infrared thermometer or those things, just mine, I just hold it and leave it on and just move it around the room, and all the local suspects,
Oh, that's a great tip. Yeah, so you're going
all
up
of a sudden,
the doors and windows and stuff like
that. And
all
of a sudden, it'll go from like on the wall, next to a thermostat might be, 75 degrees. Then you swing this thing over, and all of a sudden, you'll see it drop. Whoop! It's like a Geiger counter.
Rise in the summer,
like a Geiger counter, and it'll all of a sudden you'll see this thing dropping. And
I'm like, done that in the summertime? Have you done it in the summer? I'm just curious.
No, I haven't done it. I haven't really done it in the summertime.
But theoretically, it should do the same thing, only it should rise, right? If it's hot out, say it's 95 out, and you run that thing out towards the window, it should jump up. Now it's probably going to jump up anyway because of the glass. I guess that's not the best idea. But anyway, that's
in the winter.
Tip,
so folks, if you're going to do something like that, if it's like a cold spot and you can't figure it out, if you have one of these things, you can buy them cheap. They're maybe $30 or whatever at a big box store or Amazon, whatever.
That's why we listen to this show, Johnny, for tips just like that.
And just start scanning your room with it, and you will, the usual suspects will will show themselves.
usual,
The corners of doors,
electrical outlets,
the electrical outlets around a fireplace,
fireplaces, all the kind
windows,
windows, the usual suspects, everything you want to do.
The usual suspects is exactly right.
Number two is, John, what's number 2?
Oh, make sure that your HVAC system is in good shape.
Is up to snuff. That's right.
And this brings up a good point at this point in the fall here, is I might wind up turning on my my heater just to make sure that it's good, because as it gets older, and I've replaced parts in my furnace, and
it breaks down as it gets older, Johnny, just like you and me.
Hey,
we're breaking down.
It might be time to think about it before it gets too late, like you're sitting there like...
But you did bring up a great point, and this is one of the biggest tips. Turn the heat on before you need it.
Exactly.
Just try it one day when it's cooled off a little bit, like here in Atlanta, when it gets into the 60s, maybe turn the heat on just to make sure that it still works, so that when it's 30 or less, you're not hit with this thing. Because as we've said a million times, right, the HVAC guys that do service on this stuff, if you call them in the middle of a cold snap, you'll be lucky if they get to you by the time it warms up. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So do it now. Do it in the fall when it's not so bad. And then you'll know if it works, right? Same thing, if you have a chimney in your fireplace, get your chimney cleaned before you use it. Do it. I do that in the summertime, because the chimney sweeps they're never busy in the summer, right? So you can work a deal actually if you want to. What's one of the other things, Johnny, is check your thermostat batteries, right?
Big time.
Yeah, don't forget.
Big time. Every time you walk by these modern thermostats, they'll usually have a battery sign on them, if they're flashing or whatever. Yep. But just make sure, if you walk by it and say, "Man, I can't remember the last time I checked it," change the batteries. You might want to change the batteries for, the cost of batteries can save you some big issues.
Problem. Yeah, it saves you a problem. It's like, and here's one of the problems, right, Johnny? Number 3, insulate and protect your pipes. Do that in the summer. Don't do it the day that when the weather forecaster calls for freezing weather. That's not the day to run down to the big box store, because nobody's going to have that stuff.
Yep.
Right. And
well, you know what? Let's put a pin in that just for a second, because I think what you just brought up is a good point. If you don't be proactive on this stuff, you're going to get caught. Okay. And they will not have anything in the big box stores. That big freeze that we had that one time, I went in, that was on Christmas. I went in on the Monday, and the whole plumbing aisle was filled with people.
Yeah, of course.
And everything was gone.
Everything was gone.
So just, that you bring up a good point, because now's the time to get that kind of stuff.
Yeah, get the stuff. So one of the other things that we talk about when we talk about insulating is either insulate your spigots, or learn how to drip your faucets, or there's that new technology. I forget what that's called. It's Freeze Master or something. Freeze Miser. Yeah. It is a pressurized system, and I guess do you leave your water on with that one?
Yeah. So this is the way it works. You leave your water on. You screw this thing on the spigot, and then you turn your water on. And if this thing detects, it has a thermal like spring in it, and if it detects it's getting frozen, it starts to open itself up. So it drips for you. It drips for you, and it'll adjust itself. So if it really gets cold, it'll go faster and then slower. Faster. It'll adjust itself. It's quite an interesting little product.
It's pretty cool technology, I've got to admit. It's a little pricey. Well, let's put that in perspective. It's cheap if you burst a pipe, right, and flood your house. It's cheap in that case. But I think I saw a 2-pack for about $50.
$50, $60, something like that. I know about $30 a piece or something like that.
$30 a piece, yeah. But if you want to literally, this is a literal statement. If you want to take the worry out of your spigots freezing, which here in the South, folks, is a big deal because we don't have this. You can get them, but nobody puts them in standard. The ones like up north that close way inside the house.
Yeah.
You can get those, but most of them here are not that way. So these freeze meisters effectively do that. They just take you out of that dripping the hose to make it not run, and that can be very costly if it freezes and breaks. It's just one of those things. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and the nice part is you don't have to worry about your faucet, and it won't drip all the time. It's only going to drip when it feels like when it gets to a certain degree.
Right.
Right. It's cool. That's good stuff.
It's actually really neat technology.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the wonders of modern technology, as they say. So, yep, insulate your pipes. What's the next one, Johnny?
Look at your roof and gutters.
Yeah, and clean your gutters out, folks.
Especially, when you guys live up north and stuff, you get snow. We've both lived up north, and you get clogged gutters, and it's a
combination of clogged gutters plus the extra ice weight and everything. It rips the gutters.
And you get all kinds of, I'll tell you what, if your attic isn't insulated correctly and you get an ice dam and it's crawling back up, it's just, oh my Lord, that can be a real mess.
Yep.
So
and inspect the roof. That's check all your shingles. If you can, get up inside on the inside of your house and look for water spots, for drips, where it comes through a nail. Just take a look at that. That's something you should do on a fairly regular basis anyway, if you can. If you've got a crawl space up above your, between your roof and your ceiling. So get up and take a look at that. And then again, clean your gutters out, especially here in the South, because it causes wood rot as well. It's just more than just
it's all kinds of problems, folks.
But
that's a whole nother story right there.
Yeah, it just needs to kind of go away. Number 5 is insulate the attic. So again, you just mentioned that, John. If you don't have your attic properly insulated, and you get the ice dams and stuff, and having lived in the North, I get it.
Yeah.
But it never hurts to add insulation if you need to, and go up and take a look. If you've got blown in insulation, it needs to be about 6 inches deep. If you've got bad insulation, is the bad insulation still good? If the animals haven't gotten into it and haven't gotten all nasty, make sure that works good. Also, you want to check your ventilation up in your attic, as up above as well. There does need to be a little bit of airflow through your attic. It's going to help save your shingles and more. It's how house has to breathe a little bit in that area. So. What's the next one, John?
Well, we were talking about, your windows and curtains. If you close your curtains, it will do like a little atmosphere between the curtains and the
creates a microclimate.
Yeah, a little microclimate there, and that's a good thing. I don't have double pane windows.
Really?
No. Wow. I'm too cheap.
Well, it wasn't code when your house was built.
No.
And now at least here in Forsyth, where I live in Forsyth County, Georgia, it is actually code now.
It is code, but I don't know how much you think that a window costs to put in.
Depends whether I'm doing it or you're doing it.
Let's say that it's $500 a hole, and you've got
at least that,
and you've got 43 of them.
I'm missing your point, Johnny. I don't get
it. From a financial guy, Larry, that's a lot of money. So
the short answer is, folks, don't have 43 windows. There's your answer.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I really haven't had too much problem. Now, I will start to replace some of them, but I haven't had that much trouble with them. Sometimes I do leave the curtains closed to do that, to do the microclimate upstairs. Yeah. But I have noticed one thing. And I've seen this in newer homes too, is that they might have a double hung sash window. Okay. And that the locks aren't very good and they're sloppy.
Oh, yeah.
And then the windows will separate themselves. They'll start to cut, the bottom will start to move up, or the top one will fall down. And then it's cold coming in between where they are. The whole thing now starts to leak.
That's a seal issue. That's a great tip, John, too, is check your windows and make sure they're actually closed and locked, because they will do just what you said. You are absolutely correct.
And if so, I have seen new locks. New locks are cheap. Okay, like when the builder puts the windows in and stuff like that. The locks are sloppy.
Yep.
So there's a play in there.
Yep.
And then those windows continue to keep themselves open all the time, and
Just
people go crazy. So there's two ways to do that, or one is get new locks so that both windows can be pushed up into their seals and then latch properly.
Right.
But the other thing is, like me, what I did, I pinned my windows.
Oh, you actually put pins in. Yeah.
Even from a security standpoint.
Right.
So you can't break my window. You got to get so. But
I solved that problem the old-fashioned way. I just painted them shut. There's so much paint they won't come apart.
Yeah, PL3 on it. So yeah, they're gonna open these again.
No, it's 40 years of paint. No, actually, but I've certainly been in enough houses that you can't get the windows open because they're painted shut. I mean, painted shut. Like it takes a razor blade to get through. They're so sealed, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a thing, right? If you ever had to get out, just throw a chair through the window. You're not climbing out.
It's almost an inevitability that when you do painting and you're painting, it's hard to not paint accidentally paint a window shut, because it takes so long for paint to dry.
Yeah, and it fills it has an adhesive quality. That's what
exactly.
It is, right?
And you just have to get good at understanding how the window got painted shut, and then use a razor blade or something, tool,
knife, whatever.
Yeah, a utility knife, whatever, to cut that apart.
Just take a great big hammer.
And start smashing.
Then you'll be replacing the window before you know it. It's not a big deal. All right, we're moving on. Number 6: test your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, and check the batteries on those as well. If you haven't done that, do that. That's just a safety issue. You need to be checking that stuff, folks. It'll save your life.
And I'll tell you what, it'll save you it'll save you a night's sleep too. Sleepless night. So this is a good tip, because as the holidays approach and people, everybody's having company and stuff like that, the last thing you want your smoke detectors start chirping.
That just depends whether you like your
right. And maybe that's a good strategy.
I ascribe to the Benjamin Franklin.
Actually, a better strategy is just to set off the smoke detector and tell them to get the hell out the fireplace.
I ascribe to the Benjamin Franklin thing. He says, house guests are like fish. They start to smell after 3 days.
Yep.
So
that's it.
kind of one of those things. All right, Johnny, what's the next good tip?
The fireplace.
Yep.
Especially for you guys who burn regular wood, real wood in your fireplace.
Right.
You get creosote buildup, and especially up north, we burned a lot of regular wood in that old fireplace. So
have it cleaned if you need to, and then make sure your tools are in place too. Do you have your kindling? Do you have your firewood source for the year if you're going to use firewood? I save it up all year. Just we don't burn much, obviously here, but we burn every once in a while. It's kind of nice. So have some wood in line too. Why not? Right? It's that time of year. Wood heats many ways, like 5 ways. You got to stack it, carry it, cut it. You got to cut it, split it, stack it, carry it. What is it? That's 4. Yeah. Anyway. All right. The next one is, if you have ceiling fans, reverse them. Remember, in the wintertime, you want the air going up and out, not down. So reverse your ceiling fans. Now, quick tip on that one, John. You already know this one. Before you reverse the fans, clean them.
Yep.
Because if you're like,
I'll tell you, that's a very good. Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, if you're like us, we don't clean them. And for whatever reason, they always get covered in a fine layer of nasty dust. It's nasty. Yeah. And you reverse them and it breaks all stuff.
Surprise.
All over the house. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah. So I think one of the other things to do on that is when, anytime I stop the fans, I check that the blades are still, that they're still, the screws are still tight and things like that.
Yeah.
Just to
it's
make
an inspection time.
To make sure, because man, every once in a while it's like, ooh man, that blade.
How many jobs have you done, Johnny, where you go in the house and somebody says, "Hey, can you fix my ceiling fan?" And you look at one blade and it's hanging down at like a 45-degree angle. You go, "Yeah, sure," and you take the screwdriver and zip, and it's done. Right? It's like, wow. Yeah. That'll be $75, please.
It's something to look at. But you bring up a good point. Clean the fan before
you turn them around. Oh boy, I learned that one too many times the hard way. I have to remind myself before I do it, because it's just, oh my God, and it's always over your, like you got dinner out and you turn it backwards and it's like, oh
yeah, bad move.
Yeah. So then there's the ever famous prepare for snow and ice. Thank God here in Atlanta we generally don't have to do that too much, but
yeah, for all you folks that live in the snow climate, now's the time to be thinking about, does my snowblower work?
Yep. Same thing. Fire it up now. Don't wait till the last minute.
Fire it up now, man. The time to figure out if that thing's working is not when you can't open the front door.
That's right. Get your shovel, get your shovels out and available. Get an emergency kit together, and if you're like I was growing up, in Western New York in the wintertime, we always had an emergency kit in the car with a blanket and a little bit of water. Did we carry water? Yeah, we did. We always carried water. We always figured we'd have to thaw it out to drink it. But we always had a little extra, we had chains and we had sand and stuff that we kept in the car, because if you got off road, at least when and where I grew up, it was pretty rural and you might not see somebody for a while. So, it gets to be a matter of life and death, and plus we had snows, we had lots of snows. And if you got into a snowdrift, there's a good chance you might not have been able to get out of the car until somebody dug you out. And I say that I'm always reminded of a Christmas Eve. This was a Christmas Eve. I'll never forget it. My grandfather's coming to the house, and where we lived, there was this hill, and the road always drifted over with snow about 4 feet deep. And unless the plow went down it, that road would be closed for a short period of time. My grandfather comes around the corner, and he had this 1970 Chevrolet Impala that weighed about 10,000 pounds, probably 5,000 pounds, but it was a big, heavy car. He guns it. And the next thing I see, he is stuck up to the windows with snow on both sides, and he could not get the doors open. We had to dig him out.
It's serious. Yeah.
It's serious.
Yeah, it's serious stuff.
You think it can't happen to you, but it can happen to you. Now, fortunately, we were expecting them and we saw it actually happen. So it wasn't a big deal.
I mean, that there was days that, when it started to really snow, you had to go out and constantly clean the driveway, because at some point it was coming down so heavy that if you got behind the curve on this thing, you weren't getting out of the garage.
Been there, done that, buddy.
And so, back to, making sure all the equipment works. Now's the time to do it. Cause I remember, man, it's like all of a sudden, here comes the weatherman going, hey, we're in for one.
That's right. And remember, it's not eggs, milk, and bread. It's liquor,
ammo. Yeah.
And some good steaks. That's what it is, right?
Well, and here's the other thing for you folks out there. If you've got generators and stuff, now's the time to test that out, because with trees go across the power lines. You
got it.
So I mean,
we have that in hurricane season.
Well, that's just. I mean, I'm not even talking about our weathers and our weather systems and stuff like that and what's just happened, but this is common stuff that used to happen to us all the time when I lived in Chicago.
Yeah, so, it happened to us all the time outside Rochester as well. You had to be. It kind of became second nature. But we just mention it because a lot of things that for John and I that are second nature to a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know that, or we've just found that to be the case. So I always find that kind of interesting. And then I did want to add one other one. This one came to me because I actually was working on a house that had a well pump, and I'd kind of forgotten about this because I haven't we haven't talked much about having wells and having things like that. But if you have a surface mounted well pump, which in the South is pretty common, it's a little less common in the North, but you do need to have a heat source in there. Now, conventional wisdom used to be you just put an incandescent light bulb in there. Well, today,
you can't
those
get
are
them.
harder to get. So, you need to make sure you have a little bit of a heat. So it doesn't even need to be much. It just needs to keep that well house above, above freezing, but you got to have something in there. So just be aware of that, because that's another one. We haven't talked much about wells and things like that, more, rural things, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And that's just, I think that's it, Johnny. Did we miss anything?
I'm sure there's a few things, but you folks get it.
The one thing I do want to stress, so we always talk about helping you save time, money, and aggravation. And trust me, all of these things can save you a ton of money. They also have some safety issues involved, but they can just save you a ton of money, because if you've ever had broken pipes, you won't ever want to have broken. Oh,
buddy. Yeah, you don't want that.
And it is an emergency, and it happens today. I'll give you one other tip. Go out to your water meter and make sure you can turn your water on and off too, just in case, right? Yeah, either inside the house or outside the house. Make sure you've got your water meter. You need to do that about at least twice a year. Make sure that thing's functional, because if you need to shut the water off in your house for any reason whatsoever, turn it off. When you need to be able to do it without, like, now. It's not, you can't wait a half an hour to get a tool or something. You got to do it now. And sometimes that stuff is, they can be tight, and all you have to do is just loosen them up, move them every once in a while, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, and you're good.
That's a really good tip. And the other thing is, folks, along with that is, you can go down to the big box store and buy the keys. What's known as the key, to turn that thing on and off for like $12.
It's about a $12 tool.
So, it's not a bad thing to pick one of those up and maybe, let your neighbors know you got it too.
Yeah. And that's pretty, if you live close to people, let them know. It's kind of funny. I had one, and I was doing some work on one of my neighbors' houses, and I was shutting off the water because I needed to shut the water off I was doing plumbing. And, anyway, I turned the water off, and she looks at me and she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's called a curb key." And she said to me, she goes, "Where'd you get that?" I said, "Home Depot." Next thing I know, like next time I was at the house, she's like, "I bought a curb key." I was like, "Oh, good." She's like, "Yeah, now I know where to use it," and all that kind of stuff. It's because she'd watched me do it. She's a great customer, because woman that is more interested in learning how to do things than she is about having me do them, which is fine. So anyway, it is what it is.
Okay, Larry. So the spaceship taught you about the curb key.
The space, yes, Johnny. It turns something on.
They got Larry's
me,
curb key.
It makes me very excited, Johnny. It is they taught me on the spaceship, Johnny.
Larry learned about curb keys at this.
All right, folks. If you like this craziness we call Handyman Radio Show, hit like and subscribe. Send us an email, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. We do take show suggestions, everything. Trust me, we don't have all the answers, but we want to try to supply entertaining home improvement and maintenance items. All right. With that, Johnny, take us home.
All right, folks. Think about the winter coming up, and take some of these tips, because I'll tell you what, you don't want to get caught out in the cold, right? So anyways, stay safe. We'll see you next time on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.